One of the most common things that happens whenever I'm posting a build is that usually the best builds that you have out there require for you to do some kind of progression into the game, to be a little bit of advanced, and usually we make these builds for them to be proficient and efficient at the end game. Usually people get upset about that. That's one of the things that I love about this build, that you're going to be able to craft it from the very beginning of the game, from early game all the way towards the mid game and then the end game. You can quite literally carry this thing, which is very, very powerful, from quite literally the start of the game. There's a couple of things that you're going to be able to upgrade your gear and then to carry the rest of the armor that you're going to be farming first and foremost. But we'll get to that a little later on. This is a spear build that is going to be focusing on dealing as much damage as humanly possible whenever you have exhausted enemies. But not only that, it's also going to enhance one of the best things that you have for the weapon, my predilect weapon that I have, my playstyle, the specific playstyle that I have for this weapon, which is the moon stance usage. And what the moon stance does is that it gives you a after image that repeats all of the attacks that you do. It's going to enhance all of that. It's going to focus that playstyle. And as a matter of fact, the basic gist of everything when it comes to the basic inputs of the playstyle that you are going to have, more often than not with this build, you are going to be using the X combo. So it's very, very easy to use. And while you're dealing a whole bunch of damage, you're also having lots of survivability because of what we're going to have with our skills. But we'll get to that a little bit later on. Let's actually talk about the gear and how do I manage to get that gear. We are going to be using the Fallen Lords set. You can see in here that the set consists of 6 pieces, which is going to give you charge attack damage increase. It's also going to give you bring dodge stamina recovery rate increase for 10 seconds, which is what we're going to be using more often than not. You have the enemy exhausted damage increase 10%, and then we have full moon damage increase 15%. At this point you can stop if you don't actually have the weapon, because it is quite a little bit more difficult to get. As a matter of fact, I haven't managed to get a epic version, a rare version of this thing right here. But just with 5 pieces, you are going to have flat 35% more damage whenever you exhaust an enemy, which is what you're going to be striving to do. Because you have 10% from the charge attack damage, and then 10% from the exhausted damage increase, and then 15% from the full moon. So let's actually talk about that. This is how your skill tree should be looking like. The overall playstyle that you're going to have with this build is going to be, like I mentioned, abusing the moonlight stance. What this is going to do is that it's always going to retain your after images active, so that you're always dealing much more damage. But there's quite a bit more perks that you actually do have with this. One of my favorites being the after image that increases your iframes, and yes, this actually increases your iframes quite a lot with the second step, so you can actually dodge twice in here because of the moonlight step, which, as you can see right here, after you dodge, you can then immediately dodge back again. The second dodge is going to have a little bit more of invincibility frames, and this is perfect for panic rolling. If you're not like that familiar with the enemies that you're fighting, you can panic roll like a maniac in this, and more often than not, they are not going to manage to hit you. Not only that, but it's also going to be dealing damage whenever you manage to deal damage whenever you do a brink dodge. So that's very, very cool. The thing that we're actually going to be using to deal the more damage possible is going to be the full moon. This is going to have 15% more damage, remember, from our set bonus right in here. But also this is a charge attack, so it's also going to receive 10% more damage. And if you use this against an exhausted enemy, then that's going to be flat 35% more damage whenever you deal damage to an exhausted enemy. We also have the Crimson Strike, which is going to change your brutal attack whenever you're dealing damage, whenever you're using the finisher against that exhausted enemy, which is going to deal that much more damage. But for that, you do actually have to be on the moonlight stance. It is advisable for you to have 3 levels of the full moon, because this is going to... Usually, just 1 level in here is going to consume your moonlight stance. If you have 3 levels in here, it's not going to consume your moonlight stance. With that, you also have the persistence. So if you're dodging or you're blocking and using your perfect blocks perfectly, then you are going to increase the duration of your moonlight stance up to a maximum of 30 seconds. So you can see in here that this is all a synergy. You have more iframes where your dodges. Whenever you dodge, you are going to increase your moonlight stance, and whenever you have the moonlight stance, you are going to deal that much more damage with the full moon and the crimson strike, and it should always be active because that is going to benefit the gear that you have. Additionally, this is not a requirement, this is not a hard requirement, but we do have 15% more damage with the spiral thrust, and this is very useful because it deals piercing damage, which is very useful against heavily armored enemies. So I do have all of my investment points in here, and this is basically the first things that you should be focusing on. Later on, I do have extra little things that are not like mandatory, but for example, decrease the stamina cost of dodging. We're going to diminish this as well with our stats, so you can be dodging like a maniac, and then we have a little bit more stuff right in here that the stamina cost of our attacks are temporarily decreased each time an enemy is exhausted, so that we can perform our combos that much better whenever we have an exhausted enemy, and then we gradually recover 1 spirit charge every time an enemy is exhausted, so that's very good. You don't need the 0 point, but if you have leveled enough and if you have spare points, the 0 point, it's actually kind of amazing, because this deals more damage than the regular Moonlight combo, and this actually activates the Moonlight combo. If you haven't watched my spear guide on how to use this type of combos, I highly advise for you to do so. However, I'm going to have a fight at the end of this video. I'm also going to give you the combos that I use the most with this specific build. It's also very useful to have the resources, because the resources are going to yield you that much more spirit, so that you can be spamming your spiral thrust that much more. So the stats, I have a general rule of thumb right in here. This is a new save file that I'm using. I've been playing around quite a lot with this stuff right in here, so you will see that I am not that much of a high level. But the general gist of everything, I am going to have a guide for stats right in here, but to brief things down, you need to have in mind that there is a soft cap at level 30 for the vitality and endurance, and also that soft cap applies for the extra little things that you get from, like, for example, stamina damage increase, recovery, cost decrease, and things like that. Will not get too much into that. Just have in mind that there is a soft cap for vitality 30 and a soft cap on endurance 30. Additionally, there is a hard cap on vitality 30 and 60, and a hard cap on endurance 60. The damage stats that you use to scale the damage values of your weapon, they do not have a soft cap nor a hard cap. They work very much the same way as they do on new, for example. So they only have the cap at level 99. So what I'm trying to convey in here, as brief as possible, is that you're going to, as soon as you get vitality, endurance, and 30, you're going to increase your proficiency all the way to 99. Whenever you want to level up this character a little bit more, because this is something that you can do, then you're going to raise the willpower and proficiency 99 and 99, because the spears have a B scaling on proficiency and a C scaling on willpower. So proficiency is your main damage dealing stat. You're always going to get 3 points of damage whenever you scale your proficiency, and then I believe that you're going to get 2 because of the willpower. They also give you extra little things, so it's very much in your favor to use a spear while dodging, because as you can see right here, my stamina cost decrease is a little bit more than the rest of the stuff that I have. I do have some more stuff from my gear stuff. We'll talk about this in a little while, but it costs me less for me to dodge because of the proficiency. This has a soft cap as well on level 30. So on level 30 you get diminishing returns, on level 60 you get diminishing returns, so that's something that it's going to be extra cool. But the main reason that we're leveling up our proficiency, it's going to be because of the damage. So remember, if you want to level up this character, this on 99 first, and then this on 99 first. If you want to go beyond and further, then 60 and 60, and so on and so forth. Now I am also going to have a blacksmithing guide. This is already too much time, and I do not want to abuse your time. I am going to have a guide for crafting and how to get the best gear and the best stats for your gear, how to craft it, how to level it, so on and so forth tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. But just have in mind that in here I'm focusing on the stuff that allows me to have utility stuff, stamina recovery and stamina damage increase. You will see in here max stamina and stamina recovery because I won't be dodging like a maniac. You also have attack damage in here and max stamina, dodge stamina cost decrease and stamina recovery, and then stamina recovery and dodge stamina cost decrease, because this is stuff that complements the already playstyle that the base weapon has. Now, the combos that I told you that you should be using with this build, generally this is what you are going to be using more often than not. This is going to activate your after images and you're going to be dealing so much more damage because of this. Now, when you exhaust an enemy, it's going to be dependent on the enemy that you're fighting against. I have a general rule of thumb on what is it that I like to do. First, I like to extend my moonlight stance, so you will see in here we have this, and then I charge my moonlight and then I use this to finally finish that up with a charge, this right here. So now I am going to slow it down, and while I slow it down, I'm going to show you the inputs that you are going to have right here. But essentially, it's just the X regular combo, and then you charge a heavy attack, and then you use the brutal attack, and then finally after that, you finish up with a spiral thrust, a charge spiral thrust. Now that has been said, why do I not combine the spiral thrust? All of that combo together when the enemy is exhausted to get the extra 10% damage increase from the enemy exhausted? Well, I do not do such a thing because that is not guaranteed. I have noticed that it depends on the type of the enemy that you're fighting against. So this one, for example, might actually give me enough time to do this and then charge this and then finally finish this up and complete the combo like that. But I have noticed several times that this is not consistent. Sometimes I'm charging my spiral thrust and then I'm out of time so that I can use my brutal attack. So as a general rule of thumb, I like to save the spiral thrust for when you finally did the brutal attack, because it also closes up the gap with the enemy and deals that much more posture damage so that you can continue building that up. Additionally, if you have enough points, you will see that if you use this combo right here for the spiral thrust, it will still activate your after images. It deals more damage, but it takes more time. So if you want, it also deals more posture damage, so if you want, that's something that you can do. I will have right in here the input that you need to perform this combo. And then finally, I am going to leave you with a little bit of a fight so that you can see the potential of this build. If you like the content, like it, very super appreciate it. And also, you're the gorgeous and beautiful person. You are indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, you're on Discord, and a beautiful day and goodbye.